I am sure there are a bajillion videos on the internet giving men advice about how to talk to women. So we're going to make that bajillion and one. But today I'm going to share some pretty random and perhaps less common pieces of advice to help you speak with women, particularly in a dating or romantic context. As a professional communication coach and a woman who has been on a lot of dates, I feel particularly qualified to speak on this topic. Now, it is worth noting that this video is geared towards heterosexual men who are wanting to communicate more effectively with heterosexual women, again, particularly in a romantic context. However, I think most of what I'm going to share is pretty universal, but just keep that in mind as we get started. I only have experience being a heterosexual woman, and so that's where a lot of my tips and thoughts are going to come from, or my personal experience. So if you haven't yet, please subscribe to my channel. If you enjoyed the video, like, share, subscribe, you know the drill, but please especially make sure you are subscribed. Thank you. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to share just a few random perhaps pieces of advice that I have for men out there in the dating world. Now, you may or may not know this about me, but my friend and I used to co-host a podcast called The Lost Art of Communication. We did that from 2018 until 2022. I actually just went back and checked because I couldn't remember the dates, but we recorded for a lot longer than I thought. We have over 50 episodes, probably closer to 75. And that podcast was inspired by us being in our mid-20s, going on a lot of really bad dates. And we would call each other. I was living in New York City. She was living in Boston at the time. And we'd call each other and complain about these dates that we were going on. And it's not that there was anything wrong with the guys, but it usually came down to communication. The number one complaint we had was that we felt like we would go on a date and it would be 45 minutes in before the guy would even ask us one question. And so we talk about the art of listening a lot on the podcast. So please feel free to check that out. Again, it's a little old, and we just decided, hey, we're having these conversations, why not record them? So we don't really keep up with it now, but if you're interested, go check it out. Anyway, while we were recording the podcast, since that was the primary idea that we had that gave birth to the podcast in the first place, I always wanted to do an episode about how to talk to women. And we never did. We did have a few episodes geared towards relationships. We had a few relationship experts come on. We interviewed Molly, my co-host, and her boyfriend at the time, now husband. So there is some dating advice on there, but we never did an episode exclusively giving tips to men about speaking to women that we as women on that side of things could offer really firsthand insight on. So for whatever reason, the other day I thought, you know what? That would be fun. I'm going to make a video about that. And I know I've never done any dating advice on my channel, so not sure what you'll think of it. And if you do like it though, please, of course, let me know. I could probably go on for days on this topic. I have a lot of thoughts. So if you want, again, personal insight from a woman about communicating with women, I am more than happy to share. I am the pseudo dating therapist for most of my guy friends, and some of them have told me that because of things that we talked about, they were able to more successfully navigate the relationship. Now they're married and they're happy, and some of them have even thanked me and said, you know, if you hadn't helped me get through that one big conflict, I don't know if we'd be here. So not to say like, yay me for helping them, but just to say, I do feel like some of the advice I give on this topic can be helpful for people, especially because men don't know what it's like to be a woman. And sometimes it's as simple as just being told what a woman wants. And women, of course, want men to instinctively know what they want. And so communication in general is always the root of so many conflicts and so many misunderstandings, and can be the antidote for so many things. But here I am today sharing a few things you may or may not have thought of that the women in your lives, or the women you want to be in your lives, may be hoping that you do. So without further ado, the first thing that's worth noting is that most women have a deep desire to feel special. Women just want to be cherished. We want to feel safe, and we want to feel adored. We want to feel like the man in our lives, or the man who's pursuing us, thinks we're the best and thinks we're so special. And so a really easy way for guys to impress a woman is make her feel really good. Just like the way for a woman to attract the attention of a man is to make him feel a certain way. And there's a lot we could get into the psychology of male and female relationship dynamics and the dynamics of attraction. This video, I'm just gonna try my best to keep it simple and just give a few very basic pieces of advice that I think could be helpful. But keep that in mind. Women want to feel special. So the first piece of advice I'll offer is for compliment women, but make sure those compliments are very specific to her. There are certain compliments that most women hear a lot because men know that it makes women feel good, and it does to even get a generic compliment. But if you're saying, for example, you're so beautiful, you're so pretty all the time, it's not going to reach the woman's heart the same way that a very specific, genuine compliment about something you notice in her specifically will touch her. Especially if you are on a dating app. Now, if you're on the app and you haven't met in person, you probably don't have very much to go off besides the pictures on her profile. And so saying something like, "You're so beautiful," that's normal, it makes sense. But as you get to know this person, and even on the first date, point out things that you notice specifically about her. And even if you're going to comment on her appearance, you can make that more specific. Say, "Oh my gosh, you have the most mesmerizing eyes." Or one compliment someone gave me once that I still remember, even though the guy was like not a great guy, I still remember feeling so good when he told me that he was like, "You just have the most feminine lips." And I was like, "Oh, well, thank you. I've never heard that before." And it stuck out to me because it was different. Now, full disclosure, I had known him for a period of time before he said that. You want to be careful with the timing and the context of certain compliments because you don't want to sound creepy. And if a guy that I didn't know very well just came out of the blue and said, "Oh my gosh, I love your lips," it may feel a little weird. But he and I had already had a little bit of history so that it was more appropriate in that context. But the point is, make it specific to her and be honest. Comment on something you genuinely appreciate about her. And if you're still in the getting to know each other phase, you can say something like, "You seem really interesting," or "You seem really creative," or something that you're acknowledging you don't know yet. You don't know her yet, but you're complimenting what you see so far. So timing and context is really important. You don't want to, or I don't recommend, overwhelming someone with compliments when you first meet her or before you've met her, for a few reasons. One, this may make her feel like, "Oh my gosh, he's obsessed with me and I don't know how I feel yet." That's a lot of pressure. It puts a woman on a pedestal, and sometimes we like that, but it's usually not sustainable, and it can feel like we're being love bombed, and then we're like, "Oh my gosh, this person a narcissist." And the really big, I don't want to say red flag, but the reason I don't like it when I've barely met someone and he's complimenting me on top of compliments, on top of compliments, on top of compliments, especially if they're really generic compliments, like just saying, oh, hey, beautiful, you're so beautiful, whatever, whatever, I'm going to assume that he's saying that to every girl. And I'm going to assume that because he doesn't know if I'm beautiful. He doesn't know anything about me, especially if we haven't even met in person yet. So if you're chatting with someone on an app, I don't recommend reaching out to her and saying, hey, beautiful, hey, gorgeous, maybe once in a while. But my thought whenever a guy says that to me is I'm going to assume he's saying that to everyone because he hasn't met me in person yet to actually know what I look like. And of course there are photos, yes, but it doesn't feel like I've earned the compliment. And so part of me doesn't trust it. And based on conversations I've had with a lot of women, most women feel the same way. Most women don't like it when a guy they don't know very well calls them, like in a text, says, hey, beautiful, or hey, gorgeous, or hey, doll, or gives them pet names, because again, we just assume they're doing it with everybody. So keep that in mind. As you get to know the person, if you want to call her beautiful all the time, go for it. You can think of your pet names, but at least at that point, she will know that you mean it and that you're not just saying this to every woman that you see everywhere. So again, that is why being very specific and genuine with your compliments will stand out to her, because then she won't assume you're telling everyone they have feminine lips. Maybe you do. I don't know. Maybe that guy tells every woman that, but it made me feel good because it was different. And side note on that, women, at least in my experience, I can't say all women, but I personally like to be made to feel like a woman. I like when men make me feel feminine. And so that compliment that I had feminine lips, I enjoyed because it made me feel girly. It made me feel appreciated for being a woman. And I think most women, especially more feminine women, which there's a whole other discussion on the difference between masculine and feminine and what that means in today's society versus what it means energetically. And again, there's a lot we could say there, but surface level, very girly women, more feminine women really want their man to make them feel like a woman. And they're usually attracted to men who make them feel like a woman. Just like most men, from what I understand, are attracted to women who make them feel like men. And so I don't suggest complimenting a woman on something that has to do with her more masculine, quote unquote, traits. So, for example, anything related to work. If you're going to say, oh, you're so ambitious, or you're so organized, or you're such a hard worker, you can say that from time to time as you get to know her, but that probably won't spark a romantic connection. She's not going to feel probably that special hearing that. She probably gets praised on her work ethic at work. And so you want to, if you're trying to create a more romantic dynamic, compliment her on things that make her feel like a woman, that make her feel like she can relax and be her more feminine self and be more in touch with her feminine side. And this is really, really powerful. As I was thinking through this, I was reflecting on this one guy I dated that we'd started going out and then kind of stopped for a few months and then picked things back up. And then I knew that I liked him. I knew there was something really, really special about him. But I also felt like there was something missing. And there was just a feeling that was missing. But it wasn't so absent that I had to let him go. But at the same time that I started seeing him the second time when we picked things back up, I had also been on a date with a guy who gave me very specific compliments and made me feel so special. Now, that guy that gave me those really specific compliments was a total player and not a guy that I would seriously consider dating, and he ended up ghosting me to start hooking up with one of my friends. So I'm not saying that that made him a quality guy, but it made me really attracted to him. And he probably knew the secret. He knew make women feel really special, because all the compliments he gave me made me feel like I was the only woman in the world. And he would say things like, "Oh, you're just getting more intriguing by the minute." Or, "I don't have a TV in my home." And when he found that out, he's like, "Oh, even more points." And it's like he would specifically comment on the quirkier things about me. And anyway, not a guy that I would seriously date, but he gave me this like, ooh, really flirty, very attracted feeling. I was very attracted to him because of how he made me feel. But I knew this other guy was a much better guy in terms of someone that I would want to date. And so I kept seeing him and just noted that, something still feels like it's missing a little bit. But with time, that started to shift. And as I was reflecting on what shifted, besides the fact that we were just spending more time together, I realized he started complimenting me a lot more and being very specific with his compliments. And he would say little things like, so he speaks Spanish, so he would call me amor, and he would do things that were very specific that made me feel more of a romantic connection, versus before we had more of, I felt very connected to him as friends, but the feeling was kind of lacking. And so when he started complimenting me more and pointing things out about me that made me feel special, that really changed how I felt about him. It made my romantic feelings grow a lot more. And this is not about stroking someone's ego, but part of us, we're romantic connections are very much rooted in our subconscious beliefs and what happened to us as children. And part of my inner child really just needs to know that someone really likes me, and I need to feel that attention. And I knew he liked me based on his behavior. But again, the spark was missing because I didn't have the words. I didn't have the compliments. This being said, if you're familiar with love languages, my number one love language absolutely is words of affirmation. That's probably not a surprise. If you follow my channel, you know I'm a poet, a spoken word poet. I love words. So of course, words of affirmation is a big one for me. So this may not have the same effect on all women. All women may not need as much praise as I do. But when I think about the guys that I've dated, the ones who I really wasn't interested in dating in the beginning won me over with all their praise. And it was genuine praise. They really adored me and they weren't hesitant to let me know. Versus I can think of some other guys in the past who told me later that they really adored me, but they didn't tell me in the moment. And we like people who like us. That's part of it. I mean, sometimes we like people who don't like us, and that's a different wound. But studies show that we're more likely to fall in love and to partner with someone who we feel we have the potential to make fall for us. So all this is to say, tip number one, give a lot of compliments, give a lot of praise, but don't make them super generic. Don't overdo it in the beginning. Comment on things that she has genuinely earned and things that you genuinely feel, so that she knows it's specific to her and so that she feels really, really special. Which brings us to my next thought, which I can't believe I actually need to say this, but it is just mind-blowing to me how many times I have seen on dating apps in a guy's profile something about making fun of a woman. So, for example, it'll say, "What's your love language?" And he'll write, "Roasting you." Or, "Don't hate me if," or "Don't be mad at me if I roast you. I make fun of you." And I'm like, why? So I recently heard from a women's relationship expert. She was saying that a lot of men bond through that. They bond through teasing each other and making fun of each other and roasting each other. And especially guys who grow up with brothers really bond that way. And so they see it as something, I guess, endearing or charming. But as a woman, I do not want to be roasted by someone that that I want to make me feel special. And maybe I'm oversensitive. I'm definitely sensitive, but I don't think most women like that. So just FYI, you can be the most successful, good-looking, kindest guy in the world, but if on your dating profile it says you are going to roast me, I am immediately going to swipe left. I am not going to have any interest in going out with you, because that to me suggests a lack of empathy or perhaps a lack of social skills. Or it just suggests that I'm probably going to have my feelings hurt. I don't want my feelings hurt. Now, if this sounds too extreme and it's like, oh my gosh, like lighten up a little, once you know someone, a little teasing is fine. Like if I've been dating someone for a while or I'm friends with someone for a while and they tease me for something, that's fine. I can definitely laugh at myself, not a big deal. But especially if you're in the initial phases of getting to know someone, don't make fun of her. Don't make her feel bad about herself, because it's not nice. And again, women want to feel special and they want to feel adored. And maybe a little bit of challenge is a good thing, so you don't have to lay on the praise so thick that she thinks, oh, he loves everything about me, there's nothing else I can improve. But being mean to someone, putting them down for something, is not what I would suggest as a way to win a woman over. And I cannot think of an example of a time when someone made fun of me on a date and I responded well. Because what happens is if someone roasts you or they tease you for something, here's what I do. I'm like, I like try to laugh, but it's not funny. Usually it's like stupid, or it makes me feel bad, or it makes me feel insecure. And so I don't know how to react. And then sometimes the guy will be like, oh, lighten up, like I'm just joking. And then it makes me feel even worse. I'm like, oh, I didn't handle that well. So just be cautious, because I don't think most women are gonna like that. Again, with time, that may shift. You'll know which buttons are okay to push and which ones aren't. But especially in the beginning, just be nice. I remember one time there was this one guy who, and this is perhaps an extreme example, I don't think most guys would say this if you have any social awareness at all, but he asked me in front of his friend, he's like, so when are you getting a boob job? And I was just like, I hadn't planned on it. Thanks for body shaming me in front of your friend. Like, it was just not nice at all. And it really stuck with me for a long time, because it was not nice. And he thought it was funny. He didn't think anything of it. He's like, whatever. And maybe he's thinking like, I don't know what he was thinking, honestly. Maybe sometimes people make jokes about other people thinking it's not really a big deal, or like, oh, she's beautiful anyway, it doesn't matter. But if you don't understand someone's insecurities, or you don't know them that well, it's a really risky thing to do. And even if you do know someone well, I do not recommend body shaming or making a negative comment about a woman's body ever. Ever, ever, ever. You can be married for 50 years. Don't make a negative comment about a woman's body. Make that woman feel like a queen. Okay? And then she'll make you feel like a king. So I don't want this to sound like I'm suggesting that you have to just like bow down to the woman before you and be nice to her all the time and lay on the praises all the time. But we're very affected by our feelings. And if we feel good around you, if you make us feel good, you bring out a side of us that makes us feel like a woman, that makes us feel really good in our bodies, we're going to make you feel good. And we're going to give to you. And we're going to think, this person is making my life so much better by how they're making me feel. And I want to keep them in my life. So how can I make them feel better? And so if you're making a woman feel bad, she may stick with you out of some wounds. So for example, with the guy that commented on my body, if I were really wounded and thought, okay, well, I'm going to prove that I can make him love me anyway, or I'm going to make myself more beautiful to win him over. And to be fair, I still had a big crush on him for a long time after that, even though he was a bully to me, and not just in that way, but in a lot of other ways. And that was coming from a wounded place. And often we bond with people from a wounded place. But in hindsight, I know that that's not the kind of man I want to be with. I want to be with a man who respects me and who treats me well. And so that's what I look for now. So if you want a mature, emotionally mature woman who is not operating from a totally wounded place, which, just as a disclaimer, we're all operating from some wounding, so I'm not by any means suggesting that I am totally healed from all of that. But if you are being mean to someone and that's attractive to them, you may want to evaluate where that's coming from and ask yourself where that's coming from in you. Why do you feel like you need to put a woman down or roast her to feel good about yourself? And maybe it's coming from nothing other than you're a dude that grew up with a lot of brothers and making fun of people is how you bond. I'm just here to offer the suggestion that you reconsider, or at least take it off your dating app profile. Wait till you meet the woman and see what she's like. See if she can handle it, because if she's sensitive like me, she probably won't like it. So that's my tip there, is don't make fun of women. Again, make them feel really special. And to that end, one other thing you can do to make a woman feel special is be really curious. So ask questions. This is something that a lot of women aren't used to getting on dates, and we've kind of just gotten used to it. We're told, and evolutionary, again, not to go too deep, but studies do say that men tend to want to impress while women want to be impressed. And so men, especially in the beginning, will talk a lot to show off in an effort to impress the woman. And so ladies, if you happen to be listening to this, don't take offense if a man talks about himself the entire first date. That's pretty normal. But most women don't know that. And I didn't know it for a really long time. And so I would immediately write off the guy as being full of himself or not socially aware. And he wouldn't ask me any questions. He must not like me. Because what was so crazy about it too is I would go on these dates and the guy would talk about himself for like a full hour. And then at the end of the date, say how much he liked me. And I was like, how do you like me? You don't know me. Like, you literally don't know me at all. But he liked how I made him feel, I guess, because I listened and I let him show off and talk about himself. But anyway, that's a whole other conversation. But this is just to say, even if you're evolved to want to talk about yourself and impress on the first date, give the woman some space to share, because that is what modern women want. We want to feel heard, and it is so rare. We rarely get asked questions by men. And so if you do that, especially in the very beginning, you are going to stand out. That is one thing that my podcast co-host, she is now married to her boyfriend who we interviewed on the podcast, but she said one thing that really stuck out to her was he asked her questions. It shows a certain emotional maturity and depth, and it makes the women feel good, especially if you're asking really genuine questions coming from a place of curiosity and wanting to know the woman better. If you ask a whole bunch of generic questions, it may feel like an interview. It may feel like you just have those in your pocket for every date you go on. But if you notice something about her and get really specific or ask follow-up questions based on things you notice about her, that will make her feel, again, very special, and it'll make her feel like you pay attention. I had a guy recently ask me, he was like, so I noticed you have corded headphones. Like I have the old school headphones that actually have a cord. I don't use AirPods. And he was like, I just want to know, like, why do you use those instead of AirPods? And I was like, I don't, because I'm cheap. I didn't want to buy AirPods. was the honest reason. I was like, these came with my phone. There's nothing wrong with them. I like them. He thought maybe I was concerned about the waves and all of that, which I'm sure I would be, and I probably wouldn't use AirPods anyway if someone gave them to me. But I just thought it was a very sweet question to ask because it showed he had a genuine interest in knowing my motivation behind a behavior and a decision that I made. And that stood out to me. I was like, oh, he really cares. So, do things like that. Okay, so switching gears a little bit, I think you get the point. Make her feel special. Don't make fun of her. Ask her questions. Give specific compliments. But now, here's a big thing. And again, this could probably be its own video. I'm just giving an overview of some big thoughts today. But a big thing for women is you've probably heard that women want men who are assertive and who make decisions. And I would say for the majority of women, that is true. And I will say it's kind of a tricky balance. So I recommend that you're decisive, but not too direct that it feels threatening, which I know is probably very frustrating. And men are probably like, what? Like, what do I do? So here's an example of what I mean. Women say all the time, I want a guy who makes decisions. I just want a guy to plan the date. It's annoying for a lot of women, especially on dating apps, when the guy is like, where do you want to go? If he's asking her out on a date, it's like, where do you want to go? What time works for you? What day? And the guy may be coming from a place of trying to respect the woman and say like, oh, it's your choice. And then to the woman, she might be thinking, oh my gosh, like, can you just please make a decision? Can you just decide? Like, I want to be able to be comfortable with you. I want to be able to trust you to lead me. So there's a lot to talk about, like men being the leaders. And again, video for a whole nother day. That's a whole longer discussion. But I can't even say most, but a lot of women want to feel like the man they're with can make decisions. Now, what's interesting is that women will say this all the time, but then if you text a woman and say, we're going to McGuire's at 6 on Tuesday as like a first date, or McGuire's on Tuesday, I'll pick you up at 6. That might be nice. And part of her is going to feel like, oh, that feels good. He made a decision. And then the other part of her might think, oh, that was a little too direct. That was a little too aggressive, a little too presumptuous. And I'm saying this because I've done that before. I'm like, oh, I want a guy who can just plan the date and make a decision. And then when it comes out like that, where I have no say in the matter, then I'm like, oh, wait a sec, like too far. And so again, I understand that's probably very frustrating for men. So like, where is the line? So I suggest trying to strike the balance between the two where you're assertive, but not aggressive. And something like, I'll see you here at this time can feel aggressive because it's telling the woman, here's what we're doing, without any consideration of what works for her. And the remedy could be as simple as adding a question mark. Instead of saying, I'll pick you up at 6, period, say, I'll pick you up at 6, question mark. Or my personal favorite, and here's what I recommend you do if you're asking a woman out for the first time. Give 3 suggestions. 3 suggestions of date ideas. Say, would you prefer to go to dinner? Do you want to watch a movie, or do you want to go to the park? I mean, you can be more creative than that, but those are just off the top of my head. Or if you already have plans to go to dinner, suggest 3 restaurants and then suggest a time, but suggest it. You're not telling her, here's what we're doing. You're suggesting it. Every once in a while, a man who like really takes the reins and plans everything is fabulous. Most women really like that. But again, as you're just getting to know someone, you don't want it to feel like you're controlling and that she doesn't get a say in the matter. So just make a decision, but give the option for her to weigh in. So my favorite, again, is give 3 choices and say, how about 7? Like, give a suggestion of a time and then give her room to say, actually, I won't be ready by 7. How about 8? So make sure it's a question. And I do want to touch on the picking women up part. for dating apps in particular, or if you haven't met this woman before. So I used to be of the camp that I loved when a guy would pick me up. I would be the first to say yes, even if I barely know the dude. I'd be like, yeah, you can pick me up. And then I had some bad experiences with that. Particularly one time, it was a second date. He did not pick me up on our first date. The first date was fine. We went out again. I actually I had to return a rental car, so I needed a ride anyway. And he picked me up from the rental car place and told me that he was incredibly high. And then I was stuck in the car with him and he was high. And it made me realize, like, I do not know this person at all. I am in a dangerous situation. And I was stuck. I had no other option because he picked me up at the rental car place. So I didn't have the option to, like, stay. I mean, I guess I could have gotten out of the car and called an Uber, but I think we were driving by the time he told me he was intoxicated. And so now I don't I don't get in the car with a man who I haven't met yet or who I don't know that well, unless there's a level of trust there for some other reason. So if you offer, well, first, here's what I suggest. So first, you can offer, but make it easy for her to not feel pressured. What women don't want is to feel pressured or like they'll be controlled. But they want to feel like you can take charge and lead without controlling. I know, difficult balance, but you can do it. I have every faith in you. So you might say something like, how's 7 o'clock? Would you be comfortable with me picking you up, or would you prefer to meet there? Simple as that. And when a man acknowledges my comfort, I really appreciate it so that I don't have to feel bad saying, I'd rather meet you there. But if he just says, pick you up at 7, and then I have to say, actually, I'd rather meet you there, it feels difficult because I want to encourage men to be the leaders. I want to encourage men to drive women around. I like that. I personally enjoy being driven around. I once dated this guy for like 7 months and he was like, I've never seen you drive. So that's just a me thing. I know other women that aren't like that. But I want to encourage that, but I don't want to put myself in a dangerous situation. And so when he acknowledges, would you be comfortable? Or if you're more comfortable, we can just meet there. And then I don't have to explain myself. I don't have to feel bad. I don't have to feel like I'm shutting him down. Because I imagine that if a man offers to pick a woman up, 10 times and every single woman says no and shuts him down, he's not going to do it anymore. And so we as women need to play our part to encourage the types of behaviors we want, but it's really helpful for us if you understand that if we say no, especially before we've met you, it probably has nothing to do with you. Okay, it has nothing to do with you. It has to do with situations or experiences that we have encountered in the past. And we as women especially need to protect our safety. And we need to make sure we're with good people, because even the most naive and trusting among us, like me, eventually get to the point where you're like, okay, maybe I shouldn't trust every picture on the internet that has a male's name attached to it because I don't know who you are. Anyway, that reminds me of a story, and the last point I'll make, and then we'll wrap up, is keep in mind different cultural considerations, because women, if you're trying to court a woman from a different culture, she may have different expectations. So it's coming to mind based on what we just talked about with the driving is a story of something that happened with a friend of mine who is Colombian. So she had just recently started talking to this guy and they started dating, and she wanted me to meet him because she's like, Trisha, I'm from Colombia and he's American and I don't know what kind of guy he is, and I just want your assessment. Because, if you're in another country and you're speaking another language, you don't really, there are certain things that you miss. Granted, he speaks Spanish pretty well and I speak Spanish pretty well. So she organized a day for us, along with 2 of her friends who are from Peru, to go on an adventure. We went to these springs. So before getting together, my friend had told us, all three of us, that there were a few things she was uncertain about this guy on, and they mostly had to do with his level of chivalry. Things that in Latin America are very big deals that she was like, American guys just don't do this. Things like driving the woman around, things like paying for dates, things like opening doors and being really touchy. So things that a lot of Latin men do, they just do it. And a lot of American men do too, and a lot of them don't. And a lot of American women don't want that. And that's fine, to each their own. But to my friend, she was like, this is a concern for me because I'm not used to